You people always say that. Rules don't bend for sympathy. Please. I didn't do anything wrong. I live here. I'm disabled. I'm just trying to go home.
HOA Karen tasered my disabled daughter. Big mistake. Justice, you won't believe, folks. What you're about to hear is a story that'll make your blood boil. It's about a woman named Karen Morrison who had authority over a neighborhood community, and she wielded that power like a weapon. She spent months making life absolutely miserable for a young disabled woman named Emma. But here's where it gets serious. One day, Karen took things way too far, and she made one fatal mistake that would cost her everything. She never bothered to ask who Emma's father was. Before we dive into this incredible true story, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Drop a comment below and tell me your state. And if you appreciate stories about justice finally winning, please hit that subscribe button. Folks, this is the kind of story that needs to be heard. Merry Christmas, by the way. Let's make sure you're getting all our videos this season. Hit that bell. The courtroom lights were bright and harsh that morning. Fluorescent tubes hummed their endless song as a man sat quietly in the back row. Nobody noticed him. He wore a baseball cap pulled low and dark sunglasses that hid months of exhaustion and determination. That was exactly how he wanted it. For now, 3 rows ahead sat his daughter, Emma. She was 19 years old, sitting in her wheelchair in the accessible seating area. Even from a distance, he could see her shoulders trembling slightly. Courtrooms made her anxious. They always had. 2 years ago, a car accident had taken Emma's ability to walk, but it hadn't broken her spirit. Not then, anyway. Her father had watched her rebuild, adapt, and move forward with a strength that made him proud every single day. She was remarkable like that. That was before Karen Morrison showed up, but things were about to change in ways nobody expected. Karen entered the courtroom like she owned the place. Expensive designer suit, blonde hair, perfectly styled. That same smug expression on her face, the one that came from months of abusing her authority as HOA president at Riverside Gardens. She walked right past Emma without even glancing at her. Her heels clicked against the marble floor with cold precision. Karen had no idea who that man in the back was. To her, he was just another face in the crowd. She didn't know that for 15 years, he'd worked as an assistant commissioner for the state civil rights division. She didn't know that his entire career had been about fighting people exactly like her bullies, who hide behind rules and regulations to mask their cruelty. And she definitely didn't know what was about to happen to her. Emma had been so excited about the apartment. After 2 years of living at home with her parents hovering around her, she needed independence. She desperately wanted to prove something to herself, and maybe to her dad too. Riverside Gardens seemed perfect. Ground floor, widened doorways, a beautiful rolling shower designed for wheelchair access. Even a small patio where she could do what she loved most, gardening, just like she used to with her grandmother. "Dad, it's perfect," she'd told him, her green eyes sparkling with hope. "I can finally have my own place. Please don't worry so much about me." He worried anyway. That's what dads do. But he also understood something important. Emma needed this chance. She needed to prove to herself that a wheelchair didn't define her entire future. But within 1 week, everything changed. Karen Morrison knocked on Emma's door on a Tuesday morning, clipboard in hand. That look of disapproval was already firmly fixed on her face. Emma called her dad that evening during their regular phone call. She said my welcome mat was the wrong color. "Dad, can you believe it? Apparently only beige, tan, or gray welcome mats are allowed. Mine was blue. She gave me 48 hours to replace it or pay a fine." "That's ridiculous," he said, feeling anger start to simmer. "The Fair Housing Act clearly protects your right to." "Dad, stop," Emma interrupted gently. "It's just a mat. I'll get a beige one tomorrow. It's not worth fighting over." But it was never just about the mat. Over the next 2 months, Karen found endless reasons to target Emma. The wind chime on her patio violated noise ordinances. The portable ramp that Emma's physical therapist installed wasn't approved by the architectural committee. The handicapped parking sign Emma requested for her spot was denied because it would set a precedent. Each complaint came with a written notice. Each one included the threat of fines, violations, and potential eviction. Emma tried to comply with everything. She replaced the mat. She took down the wind chime. She followed every ridiculous rule Karen threw at her. But her father watched something happen that broke his heart. Emma's light started to dim, and it wasn't going to stop there. In fact, it was about to get much worse. During one of his visits to her apartment, Emma finally broke down. "She's doing this on purpose, Dad." She told Mrs. Patterson next door that people like me lower property values. She said disabled people should live in special facilities, not in regular communities where normal people live. Emma's father's blood boiled, but Emma grabbed his hand firmly before he could respond. "Please, Dad, don't do anything," she begged. "I need to handle this myself. If you swoop in and fix everything for me, I'll never know if I can stand on my own 2 feet. If I can stand at all, I mean." She gave a bitter laugh at her own words. So he waited. He documented everything. He advised her on her legal rights. And he watched, day by day, as his daughter's spirit slowly dimmed. Late September brought something important. Emma had been selected to testify at a county commission hearing about accessibility improvements in public housing. She'd worked on her speech for weeks, pouring her heart and soul into it. This wasn't just for her, it was for people like her. For everyone who'd been pushed aside or overlooked. The hearing was scheduled for 2 p.m. Emma left her apartment at 1:30, giving herself plenty of time. Her specially modified van was parked in her designated accessible spot. She was transferring from her wheelchair into the driver's seat when Karen Morrison suddenly appeared. "You can't park here," Karen announced firmly. Emma looked up, confused. "This is my assigned spot. You can see the sign right there. That sign was installed without proper board approval. It's being removed on Monday. This spot is now for visitors only. You need to move your vehicle immediately. Karen, the hearing starts in 30 minutes. I need to leave right now." Then you should have planned better. What happened next would change everything. And security cameras caught every second of it. Emma tried to reason with her. She explained about the hearing, about the Fair Housing Act, about basic human decency. Karen pulled out her phone and called a towing company. Emma's hands shook as she tried to finish transferring into her van. Her wheelchair needed to fold up and go in the back. That's when Karen Morrison made her fatal mistake. "If you don't move right now, I'll make you move," Karen threatened. "How exactly do you plan to do that?" Emma asked, her voice breaking with fear and frustration. Karen reached into her designer purse and pulled out a small device, a taser. "The HOA board approved these for security purposes," she said coldly. "You're creating a disturbance. I'm authorized to use necessary force." Emma never got to finish her response. Karen pressed the taser directly against Emma's shoulder and pulled the trigger without hesitation. The security footage, which would later become key evidence, showed everything. Emma convulsed violently, falling from her van onto the hot asphalt. Her wheelchair clattered beside her with a crash. Electrical current tore through her body for 5 eternal seconds. When it finally stopped, Emma lay gasping for breath, crying, completely unable to move. Karen stood over her, taser still in hand, and said words that would echo across the news for weeks. "Maybe now you'll learn to follow the rules." A neighbor called 911 immediately. Emma was rushed to the hospital with burns on her shoulder, severe muscle pain throughout her body, and trauma that no doctor could measure on any chart. She missed her hearing testimony that day. She missed her chance to advocate for people just like her. And Karen Morrison. She went home and wrote up a violation notice against Emma for disturbing the peace. It was slipped under Emma's door by Monday morning. For the next 3 weeks, Emma's father worked with a fury he hadn't felt in decades. By day, he maintained his regular duties as assistant commissioner. By night, and on weekends, he became Emma's fiercest advocate. He started with the HOA board, Karen had told them the taser was approved for security. This was a lie. The board had no knowledge of any taser. There was no policy allowing physical force by HOA officers. Nothing. He obtained the security footage. He documented every violation notice Karen had issued. He interviewed other residents. What he found shocked him. 14 people came forward with stories similar to Emma's, and they were all connected to one person, Karen Morrison. Mrs. Patricia Chen, an 83-year-old woman with a walker, had been fined repeatedly for taking too long collecting her mail. "I moved too slowly," she told him, her voice shaking. How fast does she expect an 83-year-old to move? Marcus Webb, a military veteran with PTSD and a service dog, had been threatened with eviction because his dog barked once during a 4th of July fireworks display. Karen had told him that veterans should keep their problems private. The Rodriguez family had been cited multiple times for speaking Spanish too loudly on their balcony. Karen had told them this was America, and they should speak English. Every story made his blood boil hotter, but he documented them all carefully, professionally. He was building a case, not just for Emma, but for every person Karen Morrison had tormented. He filed a criminal complaint for assault with a deadly weapon. He filed a civil rights complaint with his own division. He contacted the district attorney's office personally. He reached out to the Fair Housing Alliance. And then he did something Karen Morrison would never expect from her victims. He filed a personal lawsuit on Emma's behalf. Systematic harassment, discrimination based on disability, intentional infliction of emotional distress, violation of the Fair Housing Act. The trial was set for early October. Emma was tense before the trial. "I have to face her again, Dad. I don't know if I can do it." "You can," he assured her firmly. "And this time, you won't face her alone. This time, everyone will see exactly who Karen Morrison really is." He arrived at the courthouse early that morning, sitting in the back row, determined to watch, observe, and wait for the perfect moment. The tension of the day ahead seemed to hang in the air as the first participants filtered into the courtroom. Emma arrived with her mother, Sarah, who carefully pushed her wheelchair. The two of them had divorced years ago, but they'd always remained united when it came to Emma. Sarah's eyes were red from crying, but her jaw was set with determination. Emma's lawyer, Jennifer Torres, was already at work reviewing her notes, preparing her strategy. Jennifer was one of the best civil rights attorneys in the entire state. She'd taken Emma's case the moment he called, reducing her fee to almost nothing. "Cases like this are why I became a lawyer," she'd told him. Karen arrived at exactly 9 a.m., 15 minutes early. Navy blue suit that cost more than Emma's monthly rent. Her lawyer, Richard Petton, was a corporate attorney who looked deeply uncomfortable. His case was completely indefensible. Judge Maria Santos entered the courtroom. She was known for her no-nonsense approach and her zero tolerance for discrimination. "We're here today for Morrison versus Thompson," Judge Santos announced. "Miss Torres, you may begin with your opening statement." Jennifer stood and buttoned her blazer. Her voice was calm and powerful. "Your Honor, this case is about power and cruelty. The defendant, Karen Morrison, used her position as HOA president to systematically harass my client, Emma Thompson, because of her disability. Over 3 months, Ms. Morrison issued 14 separate violation notices for minor or completely fabricated infractions. She denied the reasonable accommodations required by law. She created a hostile environment specifically designed to force Ms. Thompson from her home. And when my client dared to stand up for herself, Ms. Morrison assaulted her with a taser, causing physical injury and severe emotional trauma. What happened next in that courtroom would shock everyone in attendance. Jennifer called Emma to testify first. Sarah wheeled her carefully to the witness stand. Emma's hands were visibly shaking as she was sworn in. "Emma, can you tell the court about your first interaction with Karen?" Jennifer asked gently. Emma's voice was soft at first. Judge Santos asked her kindly to speak up. Emma took a deep breath and tried again. "It was my second day in the apartment. I was so excited to finally have my own place. I had put out a welcome mat that my mom gave me as a housewarming gift. It was blue with yellow flowers. Karen knocked on my door and told me it violated HOA rules. She said I had 48 hours to replace it or she would find me. How did that make you feel? Jennifer asked. Confused. It seemed like such a small thing, but I wanted to follow the rules, so I got a beige mat the very next day. Emma described each violation notice, each confrontation. Each time, Karen found a new reason to target her. Her voice grew steadier as she spoke. Anger was replacing fear. This was the strong, fierce woman her father had raised. The accident hadn't broken her spirit, but Karen Morrison had come dangerously close. Then Jennifer asked about that Saturday afternoon in the parking lot. Emma's composure cracked. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I thought she was joking at first, Emma said, her voice breaking. I thought surely no one would actually, but then she pressed it against my shoulder, and I felt she stopped, unable to continue. Take your time, Jennifer said softly. Emma wiped her eyes. It felt like my whole body was being ripped apart from the inside. I fell out of my van. I couldn't move at all. I couldn't even breathe. And she just stood there looking down at me like I was nothing. Like I was garbage. What did she say to you? She said, maybe now you'll learn to follow the rules. A murmur rippled through the entire courtroom. Even Judge Santos's expression hardened noticeably. Emma, how has this incident affected you since then? Emma's answer was heartbreaking. I have nightmares almost every night. I'm afraid to leave my apartment. I missed the hearing I worked so hard for. I can't. She paused. I can't stop feeling like I deserved it somehow. Like if I had just been better, quieter, less of a problem, none of this would have happened. I know that's not true rationally, but I can't stop thinking it. Emma's father's heart shattered, hearing those words. This was what Karen Morrison had done to his brilliant, beautiful daughter. She'd made Emma doubt her own worth as a human being. Petton's cross-examination was weak and ineffective. But then came the moment everyone was waiting for. Jennifer played the security footage for the entire courtroom. The room fell completely silent. Everyone watched as Karen approached Emma in that parking lot. The audio was crystal clear. Emma explained about her important hearing. Karen threatened to tow her van. Then Karen pulled out the taser. You can't be serious, Emma's voice said, tinged with fear and disbelief. The moment Karen pressed that taser to Emma's shoulder, several people in the courtroom gasped audibly. They watched Emma convulse and fall. They heard her cry out in pain. Emma's father gripped the bench in front of him so hard, his knuckles turned white. The video continued. Emma is on the ground, crying, completely unable to move. Karen was standing over her with an expression that was cold and satisfied. No remorse, no concern, just pure contempt. When the video finally ended, Judge Santos looked at Karen with undisguised disgust. Miss Morrison, is that you, in the video? Karen's lawyer answered quickly. Your Honor, my client maintains she acted in self. I asked Miss Morrison, the judge said firmly. Stand up. Is that you, assaulting a disabled teenage girl with a taser? I was enforcing HOA regulations. I saw no combative behavior whatsoever. I saw a young woman trying to leave for an important appointment. Answer my question directly. Did you use a taser on Emma Thompson? Yes, but sit down. The rest of Karen's defense crumbled quickly. Her character witnesses were weak. HOA board members seemed more interested in distancing themselves from her than defending her. Then Jennifer delivered her final blow. Your Honor, I'd like to call one more witness. Someone with extensive expertise in fair housing law and civil rights violations. Proceed, Judge Santos said. I call Assistant Commissioner Michael Thompson. The courtroom stirred with confusion. Karen's head snapped up, looking around frantically. Piton looked equally shocked and concerned. Emma's father stood up slowly in the back row. He removed his sunglasses and baseball cap and walked down the center aisle with deliberate steps. The moment Karen saw his face clearly, all color drained from hers. She leaned over to whisper frantically to her lawyer. Emma turned in her wheelchair, her eyes going wide. "Dad." He paused beside her and placed his hand gently on her shoulder. "I'm here, sweetheart. I've always been here." Then he walked to the witness stand. Judge Santos smiled slightly. She recognized him immediately. After being sworn in, Jennifer asked the first question. "Can you please state your name and occupation for the record?" "Michael Thompson. I serve as Assistant Commissioner for the State's Civil Rights Division. I've held this position for 15 years. And what is your relationship to the plaintiff?" "Emma Thompson is my daughter." Karen looked faint right there in her seat. "Commissioner Thompson, have you reviewed this case?" "I have, though I recused myself from direct involvement due to obvious personal interest. I ensured the case was properly investigated by our division's most experienced team." "And what did that investigation find?" What he was about to say would change everything. But before we get to that, let me remind you, if you're enjoying this story, please leave a comment telling me what you think Karen Morrison deserves. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more real stories like this one. Merry Christmas, folks. That Karen Morrison engaged in a systematic pattern of harassment and discrimination against my daughter, based solely on her disability. Over 14 documented incidents in just 3 months. Ms. Morrison violated the Fair Housing Act, the Americans with Disabilities Act, and multiple state civil rights statutes. He paused and looked directly at Karen. The investigation also uncovered similar discrimination against other disabled residents, elderly residents, veterans, and racial minorities. Ms. Morrison has created a hostile environment at Riverside Gardens that systematically targets the most vulnerable residents. Pet and shot to his feet. "Objection. This is beyond the scope." "Overruled," Judge Santos said coldly. "I want to hear this." "Continue, Commissioner. The use of a taser against my daughter represents the escalation of a long-standing pattern of abuse of authority. In my professional opinion, Ms. Morrison's actions constitute some of the most egregious civil rights violations I've encountered in my 15-year career." He looked directly at Karen, making sure she saw his face clearly. People in positions of power have a responsibility to protect those they serve, not to terrorize them. Miss Morrison betrayed that responsibility in the most cruel way imaginable. She targeted someone she perceived as weak, someone she thought couldn't fight back. He paused. She was wrong. By the time he finished his testimony, Karen was no longer smug. She looked absolutely terrified. Piton wisely declined to cross-examine him. Judge Santos called for closing arguments. Jennifer was powerful and impassioned. Peton's argument was defeated before it even began. "I'll issue my ruling after a brief recess," Judge Santos announced. During the recess, Emma's father sat with Emma and her mother. He held his daughter's hand tightly. "You came," Emma whispered. "You were here the whole time. I promised I would fight for you. I keep my promises. I thought I needed to do this alone." "You did do it alone, sweetheart. You testified. You were brave. You told your truth. But sometimes being strong also means letting people who love you stand beside you. That's not weakness, Emma. That's wisdom." She leaned against him, and for a moment, she was 7 years old again, his little girl, who believed her dad could fix anything. When the court reconvened, Judge Santos looked grimmer than before. "I've reviewed all the evidence, testimony, and applicable law. This is one of the most clear-cut cases of discrimination and harassment I've encountered on this bench. Miss Morrison, stand up." Karen stood, her lawyer beside her, looking defeated. "Your actions were absolutely reprehensible. You systematically targeted a vulnerable young woman because of her disability. You abused your authority as HOA president, and when confronted with your victim's humanity, you responded with violence. The security footage shows no threat, no justification, no excuse whatsoever for your actions. You tasered a 19-year-old girl in a wheelchair because she dared to stand up to your bullying." Judge Santos paused, letting her words sink in throughout the silent courtroom. "I find in favor of the plaintiff on all counts. You are hereby ordered to pay Emma Thompson $500,000 in compensatory damages for medical expenses, emotional distress, and punitive damages. You are permanently barred from holding any HOA position or authority anywhere in this state, and I am recommending to the district attorney that criminal assault charges be pursued to the fullest extent of the law. Karen's lawyer tried to speak, but Judge Santos cut him off sharply. I'm not finished. Ms. Morrison, you represent everything wrong with how power can corrupt people. You took a position meant to serve your community and weaponized it against the most vulnerable among you. You made a young woman who had already survived a devastating accident question her own worth. The judge's voice grew even harder. But Emma Thompson is stronger than you. Despite everything you did to her, she's here today. She told her story. She stood up to you. And now everyone knows exactly who you are. Judge Santos looked directly at Emma with compassion. Miss Thompson, I am deeply sorry for what you endured. No one should ever be treated the way you were treated. I hope this verdict gives you some measure of justice. Emma nodded, tears streaming down her face. But these were different tears now. These were tears of relief and vindication. This hearing is adjourned. The gavel came down with finality. The story exploded across local and then national news within hours. HOA President Taser's disabled teen became a headline that captured the nation's outrage. The security footage went viral online. Within 48 hours, it had been viewed millions of times across social media platforms. Karen Morrison became the face of HOA tyranny, disability discrimination, and abuse of power. Her life as she had known it was completely destroyed. Criminal charges were filed within days. She eventually pleaded guilty to assault and received 18 months in prison, plus 3 years probation. The HOA board immediately removed her from all positions and issued a public apology. Riverside Gardens underwent a complete management overhaul. They hired a new management company, implemented comprehensive anti-discrimination policies, and established a resident advocacy committee that included Emma as a founding member. 14 other residents filed their own lawsuits against Karen. 4 years of harassment. Each one won their case. But the real victory wasn't the money. It wasn't the criminal conviction. It wasn't even the news coverage. The real victory was what happened next in Emma's life. 2 weeks after the trial concluded, Emma called her father with excitement in her voice that he hadn't heard in months. Dad, I've been thinking about something. What's that? Sweetheart. About what you said in court. About being strong and letting people stand beside you. I want to go back to school. I want to study law. I want to be like you and Jennifer, helping people who get bullied and pushed around by people like Karen. His throat tightened with emotion. You'd be amazing at that. I was so angry at myself for not handling everything alone, Emma said. But you showed me that's not how real strength works. Strength is knowing when to ask for help. Strength is standing up even when you're scared. Strength is telling your story even when it hurts. 6 months later, Emma enrolled in college, majoring in pre-law with a specific focus on disability rights. She moved into a different apartment with a management company that actually valued their residents as human beings. The nightmares grew less and less frequent. She started a blog about disability advocacy that gained thousands of followers within months. She testified before the state legislature about desperately needed HOA reform. She became exactly what her father always knew she could be, a powerful force for positive change. Emma's father attended her speech at the state capitol, with pride bursting from his chest. She was testifying in support of new legislation that would restrict HOA authority and create better protections for disabled residents across the state. She wheeled herself to the microphone with confidence. No tremor in her shoulders now, and when she spoke, her voice was clear, strong, and unwavering. My name is Emma Thompson. A year ago, I was assaulted by my HOA president because I'm disabled. She tasered me because I parked in my assigned accessible spot. She tasered me because I dared to believe I had the same rights as everyone else. She tasered me because she thought I was weak. Emma paused, looking around the room at every face. But here's what Karen Morrison didn't understand. Disability doesn't make you weak. Cruelty makes you weak. Bullying makes you weak. Hiding behind rules and regulations to mask your prejudice makes you weak. She leaned forward slightly. I survived a car accident that should have killed me. I learned to live in a body that doesn't work the way it used to. I rebuilt my entire life from nothing. That's real strength. The legislation before you today would prevent what happened to me from happening to someone else. It would require HOA boards to receive proper training on fair housing law. It would establish oversight for HOA enforcement actions. It would protect vulnerable residents from people who abuse their authority. I urge you to pass this bill because everyone deserves to feel safe in their home. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity, and no one should be tasered for being disabled. The applause was thunderous and sustained. Several legislators had visible tears in their eyes. The bill passed unanimously 2 weeks later. It was signed into law with Emma standing proudly beside the governor during the ceremony. Today, 3 years after that terrible day in the parking lot, Emma is 22 years old and thriving beyond anything anyone could have imagined. She's in her final year of law school, graduating at the top of her class. She's already been offered positions at 3 prestigious civil rights law firms. The Emma Thompson Foundation, yes. She started her own foundation, has helped over 200 families fight discriminatory HOA practices across 15 states. She serves on the board alongside some of the most respected disability rights advocates in the country. She still paints in her free time, though now she donates her artwork to charity auctions. Last month, one of her pieces sold for $15,000. Every penny went to help disabled students afford college. She still uses her wheelchair. That hasn't changed, and never will. But she's also become a powerful advocate, a sought-after speaker, and a beacon of hope for people facing similar discrimination. Last week, Emma got a message that shows exactly why this story matters. Last week, a young woman reached out to Emma through her foundation's website. She was being harassed by her HOA president for having a service dog. She was scared, alone, and didn't know what to do. Emma spent 2 hours on the phone with her, walking her through her rights, connecting her with resources, and most importantly, letting her know she wasn't alone. That could have been me, Emma told her father afterwards. If you hadn't fought for me, if Judge Santos hadn't believed me, if Jennifer hadn't taken my case, I could still be that scared girl who thought she deserved to be treated like garbage. But you're not, her father reminded her. You're the woman who fights for people like her now. We fight for them, Emma corrected with a smile. Together. And that's the lesson Karen Morrison never learned. But Emma teaches every single day through her work and her life. Real power isn't about control. It's not about enforcing rules or making people afraid. Real power is about lifting others up. It's about using your position to protect the vulnerable, not to prey on them. It's about kindness, compassion, and believing that every person, regardless of their disability or circumstance, deserves dignity and respect. Karen Morrison sits in a prison cell, bitter and unchanged, insisting she was right all along. But Emma Thompson sits in her law school library, surrounded by books about civil rights and justice, preparing to defend the next person who faces someone like Karen. She's planning her future. She's changing lives. She's making her father incredibly proud every single day. In the end, love won over hate. Compassion won over cruelty. Justice won over power. And that's the only verdict that truly matters. Thank you for watching. If this story inspired you, please leave a comment below and subscribe for more real stories about justice, courage, and the power of standing up for what's right. Merry Christmas to you and your family.